I know that when I'm asked to do things that are outside of the scope of my current responsibilities, I always feel as if I've been backed into a corner. I want to help, but when the request is way outside the scope of my job, I wonder if I should be doing the task. If I do, what kind of precedence that sets and how it affects my current and potentially future workload. It is a tricky situation as it isn't about as if we are willing to help out. Sometimes it's about if we should or not. So this week's top 10 is all about handling those out of scope requests that are not part of your job. And our first tip comes from Preeti B from Toronto, Ontario. This tip is the most obvious, but sometimes the most difficult. Preeti suggests being completely upfront and honest. Tell them the task is out of scope and that she can't do it. Karen Swoops from Nashville, Tennessee takes it a step further and offers alternatives as well as a great response for us to copy and use. Karen says, and write this down, my current responsibilities require my full attention. This request is unusual and out of scope for my position. I appreciate being considered for this request. However, my colleagues, Susie or Jane, are likely better to take on this added responsibility. Now, what I like about Karen's response is that it identifies that the request is not a normal part of our job, and it does offer alternatives. Number 3 comes from Leslie Hartwell from Rapid City, South Dakota. Leslie advises that you use your executive as a bit of a cushion to say no so you don't get any pushback. She says to say, I'm currently working on XYZ. Let me ask my VP if this is in their priorities, and I'll get back to you on what the answer is. Now, Leslie says that 9 out of 10 times they would tell you not to worry about it because they also know it's beyond responsibilities and your expectations at work. We don't always have to offer alternatives, and the next few tips are about being a direct communicator. So number 4 is from Chantel Herriot from Winnipeg, Manitoba. Chantel suggests that being short and sweet is the answer. There is no need for a long explanation or apology. She suggests that we say something along the lines of, I appreciate you considering me for this task. However, I feel my inexperience in this, insert task name here, will not get you the results you need. And then stop talking. It isn't necessary to always solve the problem or explain why you can't or shouldn't be doing the task. Shelley Rose Charvet from Burlington, Ontario agrees and does a cute little volley back to the owner at the end of the conversation. Shelley says, that won't be possible, but I do understand that it's important for you, and I'm sure you'll be able to find the right way to handle it, especially if you really need it. Now, this is a master technique. What you do not want to do is ending up owning the responsibility of finding someone to do the task. Sometimes in our need to be helpful, we may not own the task, but we may find someone willing to do the task, which is not the goal at all. Number 6 comes from Glynis Devine from Montreal, Quebec. And Glynis recommends that we say, that is not my area of expertise. And we say that for 2 reasons. The first reason, it's a classy way to say no, and it respects your boundaries. And the second reason is that it implies that you do have another expertise, which of course you do. Number 7 comes from Laura Thawalt from Houston, Texas. Laura likes to ask questions about the task, such as, I'm wondering about, or help me understand, to help them understand that this is outside the scope of her role. Clever questions can be a very passive way to say no, but sometimes that's exactly what we need to do. Bridget Cochran from Fort McMurray, Alberta brings us to number 8. And Bridget recommends that we identify that the scope is out of task. The task is out of scope, as the person may not realize that that's what they're asking you to do. It's not reasonable to assume that they know our full job responsibilities. So if they are not aware, Bridget points them in the right direction of who can assist. If they are aware, she explains that this is a line she cannot cross and explains why she can't cross it. Number 9 comes from Lisa Olson-Tilley from Naperville, Illinois. Lisa likes the kind and helpful response of, I'd love to help, but it's not really something I'm familiar with type of response. There are times when she says she will suggest someone else, or sometimes she says she just isn't comfortable and then stops talking. And number 10 comes from me. Now, I also agree with being honest about what you can and cannot do. And I agree we don't want to take on extra responsibilities. But instead of telling people what you can't do, tell people what you can do without taking on too many responsibilities, such as, I'm not able to book your personal travel, but I can send you a link to a website where you can book it yourself. And it's still being helpful and it still offers options. It feels uncomfortable when people ask us to do things that are outside of the scope because we often assume they know it's outside of the scope of our job. And I'm not sure that is true. So you now have 10 different options on how to handle the request the next time, and I hope they work for you. Don't assume they know it's out of scope, but figure out a way how to handle this uncomfortable situation. And good luck.